What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. On today's episode, we got updates. The Bulls preseason opener against the New Orleans Pelicans will now be aired on TNT. Also, we got some tidbits from Ayo Dosunmu while he was interviewed on the Waddle Silvy show. And then lastly, the Windy City Bulls have made a 3-team trade. I didn't even know that was possible in the G League. We're getting all that and more on today's Chicago Bulls Central.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
All right, Bulls fans. So the biggest update that we got on here is that the Bulls versus the New Orleans Pelicans has been moved now to be aired on TNT, and that is the Bulls preseason opener. So that means we're going to see Bulls on nationally televised games before we initially expected. The game is now scheduled to go down October 4th. They've moved the tip-off time to 8:30 p.m. Central Time. That's 9:30 for anyone who's over on the East Coast. But this is pretty big, right? You don't get many nationally televised preseason games as is. The fact that the preseason opener, so we really and truly get to kick off our Bulls season by seeing our Bulls on nationally televised, on national TV. And so with that being said, like, it's going to be fun. And it's not it's an interesting matchup as a whole, right? The Chicago Bulls, who were one of the better teams last season, they have a lot of question marks around them. People are going to be wondering, we'll see what's going on with Lonzo Ball in that case, if he's going to play or not. But as well, the return of Zion Williamson. What is he going to look like returning after being a year off basketball? The Pelicans team that got a lot of the players got considerably better. They also added CJ McCollum last year. How does now Zion Williamson, how does he come in and how is he going to boost that team up even more? I like this. I really do appreciate and enjoy that the TNT and the NBA made this happen, is that we get to see our Bulls tip it off live on national TV. It's going to be a fun game to watch. Preseason games in the NBA are a little bit more fun because you get to see them working on specific things. Like within the preseason in the NBA, you get to see maybe in one half they'll work on this thing or they'll run this type of scheme. In the second half, they'll completely switch. You get to see maybe our initial debut of Dalen Terry on national TV as well. We'll see if it's a return of Lonzo Ball. But yeah, I mean, while this is not huge, right, it is some positive news to talk about with our Chicago Bulls, and just the fact that the Bulls did not perform the best on national TV last season. And even though they have way more nationally televised games this season, they could be flexed into more. How the Bulls perform on the national stage is going to do wonders for not just us. Like, as Bulls fans, if you're sitting here watching this YouTube channel, you're probably a diehard fan of not just the Bulls, but maybe basketball in general. But with casual fans that literally only watch games that are on TV, the Bulls get presented to them early in the season, in the preseason. And so because of that, you may see, some more fans get on the bandwagon, especially if the Bulls perform very well. I think sometimes we can forget that while a lot of us do watch every single game that we can, or we have League Pass and we watch every game throughout the season, that there are some people that really only catch nationally televised games, or whatever is nationally televised or are aired in their area. That's all they see throughout the season. They don't have League Pass. They don't have NBA TV, things like that. So it's good for the Bulls. It's good to kind of start the season off that way on a bigger stage, and we'll see how our Chicago Bulls perform. This is not a home game, so it is versus the New Orleans Pelicans, but at the end of the day, it's exciting to see. That's really just what boiled down to. When I saw it, I was just like, hey, this isn't bad. This is not bad at all. And like I said, it's also against a team that is not a team that you would look at and say, hey. There's some things here. DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, who's one of my favorite players in the NBA, CJ McCollum, and we get to do that at home to start the season. That is huge. That is huge, and we'll see if it's going to be the return of the TNT Bulls. For sure, we've won 20 straight regular season home games on TNT. This dates all the way back to February 28th, 2013. So, hey, we got a stretch to keep up. Hopefully we do that. Our regular season opener will be on October 19th. So this is just a few days later, 2 weeks later, exactly 15 days later to be exact. But with that being said, like, it's cool. It's cool. It's something that I wanted to talk about here. Let me know down below. What do you guys think? Are you excited now that you're going to get to see the Bulls on TNT to start the preseason? Kind of huge. Now, the next thing we're going to get into, Ayo Dosunmu was on the Waddle Silvy show, and the one thing that I gained from this, and we're going to talk about some of the details that came out in the interview as a whole, is just Ayo Dosunmu. He's a little bit more poised in interviews. Like, he really, as with most NBA players, when they start really getting their first interviews and stuff, when they come into the NBA, they seem kind of awkward. They don't know what to say. Ayo Dosunmu was really poised. He really was thoughtful in what he said. And hearing him talk about basketball, you'll hear some of the quotes about DeMar DeRozan, and we'll get into that. But like one of the things that Ayo Dosunmu said, talking about how he reviews his own game, how he really likes to write down his thoughts of how he played right after the game. Because he said that if you give it a day or so, if you wait till the next day, you can kind of try to think yourself into playing better than what you did. He likes to write down his raw emotions. If he feels like he played like trash, he writes down that he feels like he played like trash. But also, like, to hearing him to talk about like what it means for him on the defensive end, to be that defensive stopper, to come in and change the tone, and even Waddle City kind of pressing him on like some of the people that he guarded and how well he did. And then they did go into his son Trae Young thing, and Waddle said, "I'm going to name you the Trae Young stopper. How do you feel about that?" And Ayo played it off saying, "Hey, I can't stop you from what you want to call me." It's Ayo's really developing not only on the court, but like that personality and being from Chicago. And he, talked about being from Chicago, talked about giving back to his city, talking about what that meant to him. Even in this interview, he talked about, going to play at Illinois. And, Waddle Silvy asked him, like, trying to get players that are from Chicago to actually go to Champaign and play for Illinois, and how not a lot of people do that as often as they would like to see. And Ayo talking about his experience there. Like, this is really good and really positive, and what he wants from himself in his sophomore season. He talked about how he did break down. He hesitated to call it a rookie wall and say that he was fatigued, but he did say that he wanted to get his body ready to so that he wouldn't kind of hit that wall after February and in the second half of the season, and how that's been kind of his focus this season. And I love that too, when they talked to him about his offense and the way that he played offense in Illinois, he brought it back to talking about the defensive end of things. Ayo really does enjoy making his name for himself on the defensive end, and as he continues to just grow in that area of his game, it could continue to be huge for him. And everything from this interview, I don't mean to like completely gush over it, but just when you have a young guard that you drafted in the second round that came out and outplayed many of the first round picks from last season in head up matchups and just overall the course of the season, and you hear that he didn't take that didn't take that lightly, didn't take that for granted, isn't coming into the season with like this arrogance. He put in work this offseason. And hearing him talk about that work, hearing him talk about how he wants to be able to shut down more players. When you have a player that's 6'5" with a 6'10", almost 6'11" wingspan, what he can do defensively is going to be huge. When you talked about him being able to take more of those bumps and things. And then on the offensive end, he did talk about that, right? Talked about how some of the times he didn't shoot, and in the second half of the season, he was missing shots that would usually go down for him. Ayo Dosunmu has been putting in work, and we've seen the results of it. We've seen his body, we've seen the photos and things like that, but really to hear it, right? To hear him talk about it, it brought it all home to me. And I know some people will say, well, it's an interview. What do you expect him to say, Haize? But you got to listen to this interview. When you hear the genuineness in his voice, right? When you hear the just like I said, everything around it, like you just get a good feeling around Ayo Dosunmu. And Ayo, who we don't know what his role is going to be to start the season. He may start off the season as the starting point guard because we don't know what's going on with Lonzo Ball. But he's been putting in that work. Now, some of the other things that he talked about with his teammates, he was asked about how he found out about DeMar DeRozan coming to his jersey retirement in Illinois. And it was funny because I never really thought about how that conversation would have went down. But in this, he talked about how he was just in the locker room after a game getting ready, and somebody came in and said, "Hey, the car will be here to take you to Champaign." And DeMar said, "Hey, where are you going to Champaign for?" And he told DeMar, "Hey, they're retiring my jersey." And DeMar was like, "Oh, all right, I'll come through. I'll be there." And then saying, being from Chicago, people say they'll show up, and he didn't necessarily think that DeMar was going to seriously show up. And then when DeMar texted him for the address, he knew he'd really be there. The chemistry of this team, and I've said it before as well, like DeMar DeRozan's leadership to this team and what that means is gonna pay dividends for years. Like the culture building of having DeMar DeRozan in here with young guys who are still impressionable, who are still getting their footing in this league, and Dalen Terry, Ayo Dosunmu, Patrick Williams, even Kobe White, I will say to a degree. Hopefully Kobe White's taking in some of DeMar DeRozan's work ethic as well. this is gonna pay off for the whole part of their careers. And he talked about how DeMar DeRozan got everyone on the team an iPad. Like, yeah, that for a bunch of players making millions of dollars, yeah, I mean, you know, they all can afford their own iPads, but it's the thoughtfulness in it. And talking about how DeMar DeRozan leads by example, and DeMar's a genuine dude. Like, there are a lot of rookies who come into teams who don't have that experience with the veterans on the team, who don't have, you know, they don't get that feeling of just a veteran that just supports them and sets that example of what it's like to be a leader in the NBA. And he even talked about how DeMar isn't the loud rah-rah guy, but he does lead by example. And while, you know, everybody's leadership tactic is different, I do think as a Bulls team, and I've been vocal, that we do need that boisterous guy on the team who just gets in people, and Dalen Terry may develop into that because we already seen him chipping on that. We saw him in Summer League going over to his bench trying to get the energy up. But DeMar DeRozan being here and what that meant for Ayo is another thing that came through in this interview. I would suggest everybody go and listen to this interview with Ayo Dosunmu on the Waddle Silvy show, even though I gave you kind of the bullet points here, and let me know what you guys think about that one down below. But the last piece of news that we got today is nothing, I wouldn't say major for the Chicago Bulls, but the Windy City Bulls did do a 3-team trade in which they acquired the rights to Hassani Gravett and a first-round pick in the 2022 NBA G League draft, which is coming up. So Hassani Gravett, what could he be? And in this, what the Bulls gave up, they did send the rights to Devin Dotson over to, I believe it was the Washington Wizards G League team. And then the Lakewood Magic as well. It was a 3-team trade between everyone there. But Devin Dotson, who, if any other questions, he's not going to be on the Windy City Bulls anymore. But we get Hassani Gravett, who is an NBA veteran. He was undrafted in the 2019 draft. He did play some for the Orlando Magic in the NBA. He only played in 8 games. He actually started 3 of those games. He played 21 minutes per in those games. He had a 3-point percentage of 42%, a field goal percentage of 47%. He had 2.6 rebounds and 2.5 assists, and right over a half a steal per game and 6.3 points per game in 8 total games played in his NBA career, and most of those were played last season. That came in 2021-22. So he comes now into the Bulls G League system in the Windy City Bulls, and this is a player who, he's a point guard, 6'2", 187 pounds. When you really hear a lot of this, it kind of reminds you of Devin Dotson. But again, for those who do watch the Windy City Bulls, you get to see him play, things like that. I don't think this is going to be anything significant as far as like a prospect for the actual Chicago Bulls. We know that the Bulls did also sign Carlik Jones to a camp deal. So again, nothing hugely significant here. Something interesting, I guess, if you're a Windy City Bulls watcher, like I do watch not every game the day it airs, but I do go through and watch a lot of Windy City Bulls games as well. You'll get to see a new face there. And Devin Dotson, who's been there for a couple of seasons now and kind of been one of the more tenured players on that G League team, is now gone. And we get to see a new class and see what this Windy City Bulls team starts looking like and developing like as well with that. But that is it for today's episode of Chicago Bulls Central. Make sure you guys signed off on any of the topics down below. Make sure you're following the show at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text and our voicemail, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related because of you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.